Do you ever wake up in the morning and just say to yourself, I recorded Keith Moon and John Bonham?
Middle of the night sometimes.
Oh my God.
Welcome back to Dead Wax.
We have with us today one of the great legends of rock and roll, Ron Nevison himself. We're going to dive right in and listen to some songs he's worked on. We're going to listen to The Who, The Real Me. We're going to listen to Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, Bad Company, and Alone by Heart. Here we go. Let's dive right in.
This is The Real Me.
Oh my God.
Yes!
You know, the end of that took longer than the whole recording.
I can imagine.
That's Ron Nevison. He's a producer and audio engineer. He's been recognized as Billboard magazine's top 5 producers of the year 4 separate times. He's been nominated for countless Grammy Awards and has worked with artists like The Who, Led Zeppelin, Bad Company, Heart, and so many more.
Delay thing, me.
What is that? What'd you use for the delay?
Tape delays.
What
Feeding
tape?
into
Echoplex?
Revox,
Oh.
Echoplex. I don't remember. It might have been an Echoplex. Revox is feeding into each other.
I just want to nerd out on those sounds this whole time.
Yes.
I want to get deep into gear here because you don't hear that.
What year was this?
73.
Okay.
So many questions. I don't even know where to start. I think maybe the first thing that jumps out to me is
Drums.
the drums.
Yes.
They are
That's where you start.
fierce but soft. There's not a lot of high end.
And
It almost sounds like they're rolled
not
off.
mono. They're very stereo.
What's going on?
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah, what's happening?
The whole idea of Quadrophenia, which is the first track in Quadrophenia, was that it would be in quadraphonic sound. Now, there was no such studio in London for quad sound, so Townsend decided to build one. And that's how I got the job, actually, because there was not a studio. So when he built it, the console needs to have quad panners for quad.
So when you say quad, that's right,
speakers.
left, back,
Yeah.
left, and back, right.
Yeah, 4, front, back. And you remember how early Beatles, when it came to stereo, they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
They put the drums on one side, the
Yeah.
bass on the other side.
I actually like that still.
We think of stereo as a performance. It's spread out and panned.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't much panning. Most of it was hard left and hard right.
Right.
When you heard Simon and Garfunkel, you had Garfunkel on one side, you had Simon on the other
Mm-hmm.
side. This was like quad. What do I do with quad? I almost just was like my first record.
Did they have to build a console for this?
Built a console that had all of the outputs, 4 outputs for quad, the monitoring, and all of that. It was a normal console, but it had quad features.
And how did they want people to listen to it?
But wait, I started recording the Quadrophenia album on 8 tracks. It had an 8-track Studer tape recorder in this mobile control room that I built for Ronnie Lane because the studio was not ready. And I had to use 4 tracks without just trying to figure out how to pan the drums. I had to use 4 tracks just simulating it in my head where everything would be. I was wondering, should I present this because I had a big history of live sound recording, live sound mixing. Should I put this? Should you be in the middle of the drum kit? Where should you be here?
Yeah.
And you're making all these decisions.
I'm asking myself these questions. And then I look over at Keith Moon's drum kit, and there's not any room for any microphones.
Why?
Too many drums. He had 2 hi-hats. He had 8 tom-toms.
It sounds like there's 8 tom-toms.
He had this gigantic kit, and if I had to kind of gingerly. So ended up, it still sounds pretty good. So
This drum sound is insane.
yeah.
so good.
So
Where did you put the mics?
wherever I could.
How many mics did you use? Your brother?
Even though I had only 8 tracks, I had to pre-mix it. Mm-hmm. When you had 8 tracks, usually in those days you would pre-mix to 2 tracks, stereo, and you'd add the reverb. If you wanted reverb on the snare, you'd print it, and you were dialed into
Wow.
it.
So does that mean
You couldn't do anything else? So you had to make sure it was. And Clint Johns was great at that. And he had done Who's Next,
Yeah.
I followed his lead on stuff like that.
But he wasn't working on this record.
Well, he did, actually. because they used Love Rain on Me from a previous.
I see.
and
Okay.
I put the ending on
Yeah.
Love Rain on Me, but which was the end of Quadrophenia. You just played the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he did do one song. There might have been part of another song that they had used from previous Lifehouse, previous.
So how did you end up answering the question you asked yourself about where's the listener? Is the listener in the
yeah,
middle of the
in
room,
middle.
on stage?
I had to think of the people being surrounded by the drums.
Did anyone
With
actually
with
listen?
with the drummer sitting there, and then the guitars and stuff around
But
it.
then half your channels are going to be taken up by drums.
Well, here's what we did. We recorded the first 2 or 3 songs, and then over a weekend, I got everybody to come in and changed it from 8-track to 16-track.
Did you link two machines together?
No.
How'd you do it?
Well, I had Studer come in and put in an additional 8, rewire the console. The whole thing, like from Friday night to Monday morning,
Wow.
was done. And there was issues because it was in this Airstream Caravan. And so the Studer, we couldn't go like 8, couldn't go another 8 up because of the curvature of the.
Wow.
So we put 8 down underneath the transport. But that created problems with the hum, being the fact the electronics are so close to the
And this is
motor.
literally-
so they had to shield this.
This is a control room in an Airstream?
Yeah.
And where's the tracking room?
In the studio.
But the
let me break
Airstream
it.
is outside of
Let
the
me break
studio.
it down to you. The studio was ready to go, but the control room with the console wasn't ready.
Okay.
So I had built this with the same kind of smaller console and not quad, built this studio for control room kind of for Ronnie Lane of the Faces in this Airstream for him.
Yeah.
And Pete and Ronnie were like best buddies.
Yeah.
So, Pete goes, hey, get the Airstream down here. I got to start working on these tracks and, the console's not ready. So that's actually how I got the job.
Gotcha.
Because
Because
I'm
you had
the
already
guy
built
that built
this.
it. I knew how to work it. Hey, yeah, have Ron do it,
How do the drums sound like this now? We're listening in stereo, obviously not in quad, but like the drums
It never,
still sound.
it never got to quad.
How did they expect people to listen to it?
I'm gonna tell you. MCA had this system called the QS or SQ system, which was going to be their new thing. It required the user to buy a decoder and 2 extra speakers. And it would take the vinyl stereo and somehow put the 2 rear speakers in with the front speakers and go through the decoder and spill out quad. The problem with that was the front to back separation was like 3 dB. It was like a big mono. And when we finally got our hands on this decoder, Pete said, I am not doing a quad mix that sounds worse than the stereo.
Gotcha.
And he had his manager call up MCA, and they were like floored. This was like one of their big rock releases in quad. But he says, I'm not doing it.
So a lot of albums.
We never mixed it in quad.
But this was a fad at the time.
It was a fad in 1973 that died quickly.
So
Because
you didn't even mix in quad. You ended up mixing
No.
in stereo, but still on 16 tracks.
Well, it was all 16 track. But I did for sound effects, I took the Airstream down to Cornwall and set up 4 U87 microphones in this inlet and recorded quad C noises.
Really?
Because there was no quad C noises. It was all, I could go to the BBC and get stereo C noises.
Yeah, I've been complaining for years about the lack of quad C noises.
It did bother me then too.
Yeah.
Quad like birds and rain,
I hate
none
to
of
keep asking the same question, but
Drums.
why do the drums sound like that? Again, it's like a softer kind of drum tone. There's not a lot of resonance in those toms, but they pop so hard.
Why
they
does
smack so
Yeah.
hard.
why do the Cashmere drums sound so good?
Well,
the drummer.
Are you using condensers? Or are these
Yes.
ribbons? Because when we think of drum sounds from the 60s, it's ribbons, right?
I like the Liver thing.
But was there a graduation when people started using more condensers on
I don't know. I
drums?
was on my own little bubble doing my thing. I wasn't party to what everybody else
Okay.
was doing.
Do you remember your approximate? Like you said you did a premix of the drums. Do you remember what you used for the premix? Like, do you remember how you were summing those channels?
There was probably 10 mics into 4 channels, and no, I don't. I was.
10
I
mics.
I took all the toms and put them into the middle, all 4, and I didn't have quad panning. I didn't think that you should have kick drums at all corners or anything like that. You
Right.
needed to have the bass and the kicks, and he used 2 kicks. I mean, he'd do everything.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Right.
So Glenn Johns was famous for the mic technique where you have a mic here. It was like a 3 mic thing where you mic the kick drum,
right.
you mic a couple feet above the snare, and then the same distance above the floor tom.
Yeah.
Right? That was sort of his iconic.
And people used to measure.
Yeah. Were you
I just
precise
li-
about it?
No, I was the listener kind of guy. I
Yeah.
would walk around the
So you
room.
threw up mics.
I would put the drums in places that people. I would try the drummer in different parts of a room, and just get away from it, back off, and see what the drum sounded like in that place,
How much experimentation would you do? Like,
as much as necessary.
was it days of
Now,
getting drum sounds?
This was
or-
also, this was a brand new studio. This was the first gig. The studio was so new, the console wasn't even ready yet.
Which
Right.
studio was this?
This is called Ramport.
And so how long did you have to get sounds before you actually started recording?
I mean, I put the drums where I thought they'd sound good and didn't move them
Okay.
because there's too many to move.
Yeah, yeah.
That's for Keith Moon. A lot of times, in future projects, I'd move stuff quite a bit, and I did a lot of projects in houses that I rented with mobile trucks
Yeah.
where I'd try different rooms, not just different parts of rooms, but
Yeah.
I try stuff in the hallway. I try stuff in the dining room. We
Yeah.
would see
What
kind
sounded
of-
good.
Yeah.
And how many people were tracking live here? We're doing like that core tracks back.
all 4.
All 4. Okay. And then the horns came later.
The horns on this particular song, I believe John did at his house. At the end of Quadrophenia, we went out to Pete had another studio out in Goring on Thames, out in the country, and that's where Pete and I did the mixing.
Did John arrange horns?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he was brilliant.
Can I tell you what's one thing that I think I noticed that's very cool about this horn arrangement? On the E, I'm assuming it's an E, no thirds, because it's just rock. It's just power chords. So like that progression when it goes 1 minor 3 4, the minor 3 and the 4 have thirds, but I'm pretty sure whenever it gets to the E chord, it's
no-
neither
Just-
major nor
no,
minor.
it's-
It's just power chords in the horns.
What I did notice about the horns is their intonation is seemingly perfect. The I don't know who played horns on that record, but they are incredible horn players. It's just like beautiful, perfect fifths.
John did all the horns.
Oh, he actually played them.
He played every horn.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I didn't.
we
know
did
that.
not have a horn section.
Oh my
Oh, I
God.
thought this was common knowledge. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't know this.
Yeah, he multi-tracked his own horn
That's
section.
so cool.
So not being a horn player, I guess maybe he did things a little bit
Yeah.
differently.
Can I ask what the vibe of the do you remember this session?
Oh yeah.
Like, what was the
for
vibe?
This particular song.
Was it a party where people like nerding out about details? Was it?
It was just myself and my assistant engineer, the
was
group,
that?
and a couple of roadies. A guy named Ron Faucus.
And what was the dynamic of the group like? Did they get along? Was it a party? Were they like concerned about details?
In the back of the room was a little table in the back of the control room, and there was like a bottle of cognac on that table. And when the session was over, it was when the cognac was finished.
That's nice that they waited
So
until
it
after
went-
the
yeah,
session was
yeah,
over.
It took that long.
Question for you: did you feel like there was a leader of the Who at this time?
Oh, Pete Townsend was the leader.
He was the leader.
He was the writer. He was the head guy, and he was the producer.
It was his band.
It was his band pretty much. But I don't think. I mean, I've read things previous that Roger was more into R&B growing up, and it. In fact, I have to tell you a story here.
Okay.
Early because somewhere around 2010. I was part of an A&E documentary about Pete Townsend, and Pete was talking about going to Decca and sitting down with the A&R guy, and the guy saying, "Where's your material?" And they go like, "We need material," kind of thing.
They thought they were
Yes,
just
the
going to
age
get
of
a
the
deal.
Beatles, right?
Yeah.
We're popular in Twickenham, and so they're going down in the lift, which sounds weird, on the way out, and like, who's going to write? And Pete goes, I'm going to write. And then I interview this guy, Barney, who was Pete's flatmate when they were in art school. And Barney says, well, Ron, what happened after that is we went to see the Kinks. And we're right up at the front. And they're going, ba-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. And Pete said to me, I can do that. And he went home and wrote, can't explain, right?
Wow.
And so, that took the band in like a totally different direction, right? The rock and roll thing, away from Roger. Roger kind of went along with it, I think. And I think there was always a little bit of friction because it became Pete's thing. And hey, I'm the lead singer. That's usually the guy, right?
How long would these guys record before they got to a take like that? Were they recording 2 days, 3 days? Did they get it in the first one?
Let me go to a little bit different thing. Since we're talking about the Quadrophenia record, it was the age of big synthesizers, and Pete was a big fan of the ARP 2600 synthesizer.
Nice.
Which was a modular synth, which you had to plug in everything. Yeah. You had to tune it up. You didn't push a button to tune it up. You had to tune up all the oscillators. And there was a book that you could like get a string sound by doing all this, but you couldn't keep it. You couldn't use a monster like this on stage. You'd have to take a 15-minute break just to get the sound. Yeah. You couldn't keep a program.
Right.
It's not programmable. Pete had a tiny little room in his house, and he had another 16-track in there, and he would do, with a click, he would do rudimentary drums and bass. He didn't want to, he wanted to keep it simple he
made demos.
Yeah, he made demos with a click track and keeping the synth. And then we would overdub the drums and bass and guitar.
Gotcha.
And now we didn't do that in all the tracks, but some of the more synthesized. It wasn't real me. We didn't do it on that. Keith, he was such a wild drummer, we would tape his headphones on with gaffer's tape, like right around his head, so they wouldn't fly off.
We know a drummer from a band about 10 years ago called Mute Math, Darren King. He's been on the show. Yeah. Who would tape his headphones around his head. I wonder if that's where he got it.
Had to. I mean,
Amazing.
How many football players do you see with like their shoes all taped on?
We're going to get to Bad Company, but you said you had one story about the Kashmir drum sound, which I have to ask about.
Yeah, well, Kashmir was part of when I worked with Led Zeppelin on the Physical Graffiti album.
Which is insane, by the way. I can't believe you worked on Physical Graffiti.
I know, I was just thinking, let's appreciate that sentence for a second.
Well, when I got the call, it was probably because of Quadrophenia, and it was because I built this studio for Ronnie Lane, the aforementioned Lane's Mobile Sound in the Airstream. And they wanted to go down to Headley Grange, which they had recorded like Houses of the Holy and other projects there. Now, whether or not they heard I was the hot new guy or whether or not the Rolling Stones Mobile wasn't available, I'm not sure. But I got the call to come and do it. And
because they wanted to go record in a house.
Yeah, it was
They didn't want to go to a studio.
It was a house in Headley called Headley Grange.
Got it.
And it was an old Gothic house, beat up, but it probably had been really beautiful. It was like a rental. All right. You walked into it, and there was the big hallway with a stairway that went up like 3 flights. And then the rooms were off to the side. And Bonham had put his drums right where he had before for previous recordings. And when I started putting mics around the drum kit, he went, no.
Put them up there.
No, he showed me where they had put it before, Andy Johns or whoever it was.
Yeah.
And so I can't really take credit too much for that.
So where'd you put the mics?
On the landing.
How far from the drums?
I would say about as far as the camera is.
That's how far away the mics
15 feet away.
Maybe even 20.
No close
and about as, but no, not one. Just stereo. That very day that we cut that track, I got an Eventide phaser to try out.
Nice.
And I had heard it was good on cymbals. So now
my God.
Realize that this was a stereo track. I had it on like tracks 2 and 3. He didn't want to put something like that on an edge track.
Yeah.
So I put the drums on like tracks 2 and 3. I fed one side of the drums into the Eventide phaser and put that on track 4. And that was the setting. And it,
Ron, that's insane.
I know, it's pretty
That is
crazy.
one of the most iconic drum sounds ever recorded.
I
is
mean,
this
with the
freaking phaser drum
phaser, yeah.
sound.
And
What was
it's
the
just,
unit of the was it like it wasn't H3000. This is pre-H3000.
It was in 1973, whatever, Eventide
Yeah.
phaser.
I can't believe you placed the drums for Kashmir and you also chose to use a phaser on this recording, which again is like an insane
That was an accident.
choice.
It was
But-
one of those happy accidents.
But that's the beauty of recording, right?
It is.
Let's
Here we
listen
go.
to it.
Here we go. This is Kashmir, Led Zeppelin.
Do you ever wake up in the morning and just say to yourself, I recorded Keith Moon and John Bonham?
middle of the night sometimes.
Oh my God. I can't believe. I mean, how crazy is that?
It's fucking crazy.
I've been lucky to work with great singers and great bands and great drummers. Simon Kirk, amazing, simple drummer on Bad Company. He was a great drummer too.
Speaking of which, let's listen to Bad Company.
Yeah.
Bad company till the day I die.
Here it is at the end of that. He goes, and the cold wind blows. I had him outside against this brick wall at Headley Grange,
Uh-huh.
and it was freezing. So that was part of his ad lib. And the cold wind blows.
Wow.
At the end of that.
That's awesome.
When you're recording records like that, how many choices are you making and printing to tape when you're recording? Like, are you printing EQ and compression and verbs? Like, how much are you?
Not much.
Not much. So you're printing dry for the most part.
That whole album, Bad Code, took 10 days to record.
Can I
He
ask?
would do a track. He would run out there and throw a solo on it, and then we would, we'd cut all the tracks, and then he would do the vocals, and we do backgrounds, and
One song a day.
Oh no, 3 songs a day, maybe.
And then
2
overdubs.
songs,
And then
and then overdubs, and then we went to Olympic Studios to do like some horns and background singers and mixing. But the whole recording part took 10 days, and then probably another 10 days. for mixing.
Was this in the same house as Kashmir was recorded?
This was, yeah.
Crazy.
But I didn't use that. What happened with the Zeppelin thing is that I went out to do what we talked about, and John Paul Jones didn't turn up for the sessions. They never talked about it. I never really asked why he wasn't there. He had some personal issues or family issues or something. So we were out there for like 4 or 5 days just doing Elvis songs and things like that, getting sounds, and then I got the word that we were gonna take a break. Hey, I've got this band, Peter Grant told me. It's the guy from Free, and it's the guy from Mott the Hoople, and drummer from Free, and this other bass player called the Paul Rogers Group. It wasn't Bad Company, those. Can you work with them?
And this
fill
is
in
the manager
time?
of
Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin that you're talking
Who had
to.
just started a label called Swan Song, and he had just signed a management thing with Paul Rogers and group.
Which was like a super group. Bad Company was.
Kind of,
Yeah.
yeah. So I did that
What a great
album in
name.
10 days. And Bad Company was that track that you just played. It was taken from that song because they needed a name. In other words,
So the song came first.
the song came first. But I already knew what the drums sounded like in the hallway at Headley Grange because I had done those Elvis songs.
Are those
So-
drums in the same place as
No,
Bonham's? You
no.
moved them.
So I put these in the dining room.
Yes.
I didn't want that much of a bombastic thing. I wanted a live sound. I used condenser mics,
Yeah.
and it turned out great, crispy, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sound
You know.
brighter and just
Yeah,
more
and
fun.
but it's what a steady drummer, Simon Kirk.
Yeah.
Amazing drummer. Ended up doing 3 Bad Company albums, all with remote trucks.
I just want to point out
Yeah.
your attitude. Like, this is the early 70s when there's, the height of state-of-the-art studios. and you're putting recording gear in trailers and going to mansions and putting drums in dining rooms and stairways. You're going and getting a new phaser unit and just running. You have this attitude
Day in the life.
of experimentation that I think nowadays so much of music is backwards looking, and people listening to these records that you worked on and saying, no, we got to use the same mics and the same gear that they used. But really, you guys weren't looking backwards. You were just messing around, and you went to the store and got a new piece of gear and put something through it, and you had a freedom about you that I think is admirable and awesome.
Thanks. I think that part of it is when you're walking into when you rented a house for the two different houses for two different Babies albums in L.A. And when you walk into a house and you're trying to figure out where to put everything, hiding a bass amp in a closet,
Yeah.
and doing all that stuff, it's not like walking through the doors of a recording studio that everybody had walked through. There's less kind of pressure on you. And it makes you find unique sounds that nobody else has had before.
Yes.
And
That
trial and error.
attitude too. Of like
You-
even just
you
the
have to. You
Yeah.
have to do that.
it's awesome.
And you have to put up with traffic noises and stuff like that you don't have
You get
to
more
in
creative
studios.
too. You have more constraints. You have to work
But
around.
also the band is right there living with, which mostly it's good.
Should we listen to the last track?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is Alone by Heart.
Heart.
Till now, I always got by on my own. I never really cared until I
Oh my god.
Wow.
Come on.
Oh.
Let's go do karaoke right now.
That vocal performance is stunning. I
you
mean,
crushed
what
that
a
vocal.
voice. Oh my God.
How did you get involved with this?
They wanted me to do a couple of ballads. That's what my manager told me. Hey, you interested in working with Hart? I went, yeah. I even might have put an expletive in there too. And well,
Heck
then
yeah.
I'll arrange you go up to Seattle and meet the girls.
Okay.
So I went up to Seattle. We had they even picked me up at the airport, and we had an evening, and everything went great. And the next day, I got a call from my manager saying they liked you so much they wanted you to do the whole record. I said, great. And then I had a meeting with Don Grierson, who was the head of A&R for Capitol, and he said to me that this was a band that had like a gigantic first record, Dreamboat Annie, with Crazy on You and Magic Man, and I think all those kind of songs in the late 70s. And then they started deteriorating because the guys that were in the band with the girls they broke up the relationships. And as great a guitar player as Howard Leese was, he wasn't writing the riffy stuff.
So what was the leap from engineering to producer, to back up for a second? Do you remember what was the first thing that you
No, I mean,
produced?
I had been producing since I got to L.A.
I mean, even the story
Flo
about
and Eddie and Dave Mason. I had a couple of big albums with Dave Mason that I produced.
even the story about the phaser is producerial.
I was experimenting.
You were experimenting.
I wouldn't make as big a thing, but it's a great story now that happened. I was experimenting. I wasn't even going to play it to them. I wanted to hear what it sounded like on cymbals.
Did you-
It happened to be the song that I didn't have any kind of grandiose idea.
Was it a conscious thing? Like, you know what? Engineering is not enough. I need to start producing. Was that a conscious thing or just
Yeah, it
natural?
was. It was because the producers were making the big bucks, and they were royalty artists. So I decided that if I wanted to be rich and famous, I should start producing.
So you wanted to be rich and famous.
I did, yeah. And so I kind of pushed for that.
I love that.
Now this song alone, was not on the first album that I did with them. That had These Dreams and What About Love. This is on the Bad Animals album, which is the second. So I'd already been through the whole scenario with them. We'd sold 10 million records on the first album, and so we're now in this second album a couple of years later. And it was easier to
10 million records.
So the guy that wrote that song alone, two people, Billy Steinberg and Tom Kelly. Tom was a background singer that I
I know
had
Tom
used.
Kelly.
Yeah.
I used to play music with his son.
There you go.
Tyson.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Tom was a background singer that I used to use, and he sent me these songs. And so when it came to do the vocals, I'll cut to the end of this story. When it came to do the vocals, neither one of the girls could hit the high harmony. How do I get you alone?
Yeah.
And so I called up Tom. I said, who did that on your demo? He said, I did. I said, get over here.
He sang higher than the girls.
Yeah. So,
And
he
so that's
came
him
over.
on there.
You can't tell. Can't
Who-
tell.
who found
could be
the
Could
song?
be a mouse singing in there.
Was that you? Was
Oh,
it
I
a
found-
label?
Yeah, I
You found it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the instruments that you used? Because that first synth sounds like a FM.
Yeah, I think
Two
it was a
cents at the top.
I'll tell you what it was. It was a Chroma.
Oh,
Fender Chroma.
A Fender Chroma.
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 Okay, I'm fascinated by just this process of okay, so you've sold 10 million records with Heart. It's time for the next record. You need songs.
I decide after the songs are played to me if there's hits there.
So who
There's
played you this
different
song?
things.
Were-
The band plays me the songs.
Okay, the
And-
band found
Yeah,
this.
then I go and have a meeting with the manager and with the record company, and I said, well, I like a lot of these rock songs, but there's not really, in those days, especially mid-'80s, there was a couple of different formats. There was AOR radio, as you know about, rock radio, and there was CHR, contemporary hit radio. And if you had a big rock hit, you could sell 500,000 records. And if you have a big CHR hit, you have in the millions, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't have anything that fit in the CHR kind of mold, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Don Grierson had said that I'll sign you if you agree on the songs and the producer. And they picked me to be the producer. So I found songs for them. I found These Dreams for them. And I liked their songs. They just didn't have hits for me.
And how did
So
you find
I don't,
the
I don't want
songs?
this to be misconstrued that he didn't like our songs.
Right.
'Cause I did like them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where did you get songs?
Well, as a producer, you're like the conduit for every songwriter in the world. You get
So you have people
get
sending you songs all the time.
thousands of songs.
so did you just spend your days listening
No.
to demos?
No.
Who listened to the demos?
Well,
and who was your
you know,
tastemaker?
people would say like, well, people would send me a song, and I would say, I'm not listening right now, and they go, what? What do you mean you're not listening? And I'd say, I only listen with an artist in mind. When I need a song for an artist, I start listening because I can picture them in my mind. I can picture Ann Wilson singing, if looks could kill, you'd be lying on the floor, you'd be begging me, please, please, don't hurt me no more.
Yeah.
You know, and so I need to, a good song's a good song, but I'll forget about it in 2 years. I'm not going to go through all these hundreds of songs, you know.
So you go through the catalog when you're like, here's a
when I
band. They got a couple good songs. I want to add some more good songs to the mix, and so you go through your own.
I don't think I went like that because I only went through the songs if I needed a hit song. You know, I wanted this band to have as many of their songs on as possible. It's not like let's get 5 of these and 5 of these. You know?
Right.
Like 1 song, 2 songs
Yep.
a record to, you know.
And can you walk us through the process of demo to completed recording? What was the flow
Well,
of?
a song that didn't write, there was already a demo.
Right.
For instance, when I remember this, there's a song, What About Love, that was on the first album, What About Love?
Yep.
And it was a really wimpy demo. You know, when I played it to them, they flipped out. They hated it. And I said, okay, look, we'll work it up. If you don't like it, we won't do it. Very simple.
Yeah.
You can't make it your own. Think of it as notes on a paper, words on a sheet, you know, and just start playing it and see and they worked it into something for themselves. So with power and with Denny's drumming and
So they
You know-
play it all together as a band before you started recording.
Well, we would, of course, we would rehearse.
You'd rehearse it. You wouldn't start building the arrangements.
No.
Like, okay, keys
Not-
and then drums and bass and demo,
Well,
vocal.
primarily a guitar band. I like to do live recordings, and then exchange the pieces. Mm-hmm. I did a UFO record called Lights Out, if you remember that. Mm-hmm. And the keyboard player, I told him that he was fucking up and he was making a lot of mistakes, and I probably would have to redo his part. And he goes, "Well, why do I have to do it now?" And I said, because if it's not in the headphones, somebody else will creep into
that
your
space.
part.
Right.
Take that space, and when I go to put it back on, it won't be there.
Right.
And so you need to have that kind of,
I see.
you need to formulate the whole thing.
The sketch
and then,
is there.
And then get each part better. Get the vocal better, and get the guitars sounding better and more powerful or whatever.
Do you end up replacing a lot of things when you're...
Mostly, well, it's hard to say.
One thing that we've talked about a couple of times and I think about is, this was not recorded with a click, right?
No.
Okay, because you came up working with these bands that had such unique senses of time together. The way that they all felt time, the way that Bonham feels time is different from Keith Moon and whatnot. And I would listen. It becomes apparent the fills going into the choruses. You feel the time like pull back. It's just that is lost in so much of music today,
Yeah,
where
I
like
agree.
things speed up. Like halfway through the solo, they go to the eighth notes and the hat, which ramps, and then there's so much drama that's lost in like the ebb and
I used
flow
to cut
of
a
time.
lot of takes together because of that, and sometimes the times didn't match. Sometimes
Right.
I want to say one thing about "Alone," the song that we
Yeah.
just played, because the second chorus comes along, and the vocals don't start there.
Yeah.
And the record company flipped out when I played it to them. They said, what are you doing? I said, well, just listen, And then she comes in with this great ad lib, right? But it was so untraditional that they were worried that it wouldn't fit into people go like this big rock thing and no vocals.
Can we listen to that really
Yeah,
quick?
let's listen.
Till now,
Yeah.
I only got the...
But that vocal moment,
That
is
snuck by me.
soaring.
Wait, how did that come about? That there's no vocal? Was that a conscious decision?
Yeah.
Like, no,
Oh, yeah.
don't sing here. Come in with a
we
crazy.
worked that out like that.
okay, we're nearing the end of our session here. What's a record that you didn't produce but that inspired you?
Was there a song you heard as a kid that lit you up and made you want to do music?
We didn't get to this part of my career, but I was a background singer in a doo-wop band
Were you really?
in the 50s.
Wow.
In the early 60s. A song that I remember, aside from Elvis, was Dream Lover by Bobby Darin.
Oh yeah.
Dream lover, where are you? With a love oh so true.
And maybe the reason I like it so much is because I bought a 45 and saved up for that.
Yeah.
And I took it to school and it fell out of my locker.
Ugh.
And in those days, vinyl broke into a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
Right? And I went, there goes my dream lover.
Oh my God. Wait, I actually am curious. Instead of a song recommendation, can you answer the same question that Ron answered? What is a song, do you remember as a kid, that just lit you up? The first time you were lit up by music that made you want to play?
I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's so good. The real answer is Weird Al Yankovic.
You won't get no dessert till you clean off your plate, so eat it. Don't you tell me you're full, just eat it. Eat it.
I have to say the entire Sgt. Pepper record
Oh.
blew my mind.
Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends.
What do you got for us, Ryan? Song that inspired you as a kid. Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Many of Stevie Ray Vaughan. The one I was going to say is the album Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs.
She took my hand and tried to make me understand.
Yeah. Would you want to do the honors here? We have a diamond.
Ron, thank you so much for
Okay.
joining us. This was awesome to
Oh,
have
good.
you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, man. What a treat.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. This has been Dead Wax, Jack Conti, Ryan Lerman. If you like what you've seen here, comment and subscribe. And tune in next week for more episodes.
See you later.